Debt is a ghost that wears your clothes, drives your car, and sleeps in your bed while you lie awake at 3 in the morning wondering how you became both the richest person you know and the most terrified, because here's the paradox that will sit on your chest, heavier than any credit card statement. The more you borrow to feel free, the more trapped you become, and the more trapped you become, the more you borrow to escape the feeling of being trapped. A circle so perfectly American that we've built a $17 trillion monument to it. You already know the math, or you've learned to look away. The average household owes over 100 grand before you even count the mortgage, and 40% of us couldn't handle a small emergency without swiping something. But numbers aren't what haunt you. What haunts you is the quiet recognition that the pleasure of buying always fades before the pain of owing does. And somewhere along the way you started confusing borrowed money with your own, walking through a life where the bank owns your mornings and the student loan companies own your future and the credit card issuers own your Friday nights, and you told yourself it was normal. An investment, good debt, the cost of participation in the dream, until the dream started feeling like a lease you can't break. And here's the neuroscience that nobody put on the brochure. Your brain's reward system doesn't distinguish between cash and credit. It just feels the dopamine of the purchase, the anticipation, the unboxing, but your brain's stress system does know the difference, and it keeps a separate ledger in your body, one that measures safety by how much you owe, so you spend your days cycling between a high you paid for and a low you can't afford to notice. Until you're not buying things anymore, you're just buying relief from the last time you bought relief. The American twist is that we moralize the whole thing, dividing debt into saints and sinners, good for education and homes, bad for vacations and shoes, as if interest cares about your intentions, as if compounding isn't a slow, silent, patient predator that doubles your mistakes every few years. While you argue about whether you deserve a latte, and behind all of it is the story we were sold, that you can borrow your way into prosperity. That waiting is for suckers, that only chumps drive old cars and rent forever. So you borrowed and you bought, and you filled your life with evidence that you were winning, except the evidence was rented, and the rent is due, and now you're lying awake wondering why you feel poor when you're surrounded by things. But here's the quiet reversal that only really sinks in the second time you let yourself hear it. The wealthiest Americans aren't the ones with no debt. They're the ones who realize that debt is a tool, not an identity, and that every dollar of interest is a dollar of your future self handed to a stranger. So they stopped borrowing for things that lose value and started seeing credit not as a way to live larger, but as a leash they chose to hold loosely. They don't have more, they owe less, and that's a different kind of rich, the kind that lets you sleep on a pillow that actually belongs to you. Let me tell you about Lisa. She graduated owing $60,000, bought a car she couldn't afford, filled 5 cards, and by 28 she was $92,000 underwater, drowning in a sea of minimum payments, until a counselor told her drowning people don't need more air, they need to stop struggling and swim. So she sold the car, moved into a basement, worked 2 jobs, and put every extra cent toward the smallest balance first, then the next, and for 2 years she had no life. And then the final payment cleared and she sobbed, not from relief, but from realizing the debt hadn't been her biggest problem. Her biggest problem was believing debt was normal, that she deserved nice things now, that payments could stretch forever. And in that moment she understood that the opposite of debt isn't poverty. It's the unwillingness to be a customer of your own anxiety. The American cognitive paradox is right here. We borrow to feel rich, and borrowing makes us poor. We finance the present by mortgaging the future, and then wonder why the future never shows up. And the only way out is to want what you can actually afford, to delay, to look at a credit card offer like a loaded gun and a paid-off beater like a key to a room of your own. Because the things you own free and clear don't just fill space, they fill a different emptiness, one that interest can't touch. And right now your brain might want to argue that debt is unavoidable, that you need a score, that everyone does it, and that's exactly the voice of a drowning person asking for a heavier anchor. Normal doesn't mean safe, it just means common, and common nearly killed Lisa. The question that started this why do we borrow more than anyone yet feel both rich and poor has an answer that the first viewing only half reveals. Debt is a hallucination of wealth, and the things you think you own are actually just long-term rentals, and the only real wealth is what stays when the payments stop. So if something in you just exhaled, if the thought stirred to send this to someone who just bought something on a card they won't pay off, that's not about me. It's the recognition that the rush is a lie and the wait has a name, and sharing that name might be the first payment you make toward a different kind of rich. Now go make one extra payment on the smallest thing you owe. That's an order.